Hi, good morning, everyone. Good morning. Um, my name is Kennedy Ojeka Idoko Isaac, a 200 level student of the University of Lagos from the Department of History and Strategic Studies. Um, I'll be taking a topic this morning, the rape of Silesia. That's uh, a mini topic under a very broad topic, the War of Austrian Succession. All right. So that happens to be one of our topics in one of the courses we also taken this semester from HSS 232, um, Evolution of International System, and the lecturer for this course is Professor Igwedo Ikogwale. That's given so special credits to him. Special credits to him. So this moment I'll be taking this course. I'll try as much as possible not to be very complex. I'll try and ensure that it's understandable, so much so that if you come across this video and you pay attention, you'll be able to understand, this topic. You'll be able to relate with it, especially if you're following carefully. All right. So without wasting so much time, before we look into the Austrian War of Succession, it's quite imperative for us to understand a war that preceded this War of Austrian Succession. Yes, because by so doing, understanding the pretext, we won't find the context difficult. So, the war that preceded the Austrian War of Succession, that is going to be like a reference point subsequently, is the War of Spanish Succession. The War of Spanish Succession was a very disastrous war that happened in Europe from 1700 to 1713-14, precisely 14, because in 1713 there was the Treaty of Utrecht that ended the war, and in 1714 there was the Treaty of Rastatt and Baden that officially ended the dispute between the two claimants to the throne, France and Austria. All right, so the focus is not War of Austrian Succession. The focus is not War of Spanish Succession. The focus is the War of Austrian Succession. So I'm going to ensure that even if I'm drawing inferences from the War of Spanish Succession, you don't get confused. All right. So now, when the War of Spanish Succession ended in 1714, before the war ended, Emperor Leopold's first child, Joseph I, who originally was to inherit the Austrian throne, he died. Yes, he died. So when he died, the younger son of Emperor Leopold, that's King Charles, eventually ascended the throne of Austria. Well, they were like, so what's the need to fight? What's the need to fight? So, and aside from that, there was this economic meltdown in these European nations, so much so that they didn't really find this war worth continuing. Was the reason why Britain has to start, secretly making peace negotiation with France, which eventually ended the War of Spanish Succession. However, before the War of Spanish Succession officially ended, it happened that Spain had to make some restitutions. Of course, some of the restitutions they made was some key Italian territories like Naples, Sicily, Sardinia, and Milan. They were relinquished. They were given to some of the people who participated in this war. So these places I just mentioned, for instance, was given to Austria. Yes, and Gibraltar and Minorca, as well as Canada. Some parts of Canada was given to Britain. Yes, was given to Britain, and also parts of southern Netherlands, modern day Belgium, that was also given to Austria. Of course, Prince Eugene of Savoy also got a key Italian territory that originally belonged to Spain. All right. So basically, what happened? We all know that the War of the Spanish Succession, occurred due to the death of the childless King Charles II of Spain. That was what necessitated the war, following the fact that he had nobody to succeed him. Then the two relatives, King Charles and King Louis, and Emperor Leopold were now fighting, and then the other European nations joined hand. All right, and this started taking sides, which escalated and became, an European concerned war. All right, so basically, right about now, we'll be taking the War of Austrian Succession. Beautiful. So it was a good startup point. That was why I had to chip in the eventualities of the war of the Spanish succession, so we could use that as a reference point in explaining the war of Austrian succession. So King Charles the Sixth, or Emperor Charles the Sixth, eventually became the king of Austria. Yes, following the peace treaty of Utrecht and that of Rastatt and Baden in 1714. So in October 1714, Emperor Charles the Sixth of Austria, he died. So when he died, unlike the case, it actually ended his nearly 30 years reign, because he reigned from 1730 thereabout to 1713 to 1740. Okay, so he died in October of 1740. Okay, so when he died, it became a problem. It became problematic in the European community. It was not as in the case of Spain. In the case of Spain, it was a major concern, but here it was just a little problem that is created. So let's explain this. Now, unlike what happened in the case of the War of Spanish Succession, where Charles died childless, this one died, but he had a daughter. All right, and that daughter was Maria Theresa. So before he died, in 1713, he issued what we know as the Pragmatic Sanction. So basically, the Pragmatic Sanction was a legal document ensuring that his daughter Maria Theresa would take the throne without any form of opposition. All right, so most European powers actually agreed, except the Germanic states, one of the Germanic states, which was Bavaria. So even some of the Germanic states accepted this Pragmatic Sanction, but Bavaria particularly refused. They refused. That why should a woman, why should Maria Theresa be the king, the queen rather, the ruler of Austria? Why? So Bavaria refused, even while Emperor Charles VI was still alive. Bavaria refused. So, however, since a succession was already decided and widely accepted, at least a good number of the European nations have already accepted this Pragmatic Sanction. So there was no expectation of war. We weren't expecting any war to happen. Yes, a good number of people have already accepted Maria Theresa. So why should there be war? Or was it enough for only Bavaria to wage war, and Bavaria is just too small a factor to spark the Austrian War of Succession? So, however, before Emperor Charles VI died, he left behind a weak and troubled Austria for his daughter. Now, Austria has already suffered they've suffered military defeats. They suffered so much of military defeats in the war of the, war of Polish succession that started in 1732 down to 1738, okay, and the Russo-Turkish War, which started in 1735 down to 1739. So basically, these two wars weakened Austria's militarisms, weakened Austria's, military. So much so that they became a weak nation in terms of their military prowess. All right. So he left Austria in this kind of condition for his daughter. And aside from that, the money in the treasury, like in the treasury, was nearly, empty when Maria Theresa took over the throne, and she was barely 23 years old as at that time when he inherited a country that was financially unstable, politically fragile, and militarily unprepared. Is that cool? So now, our ministers were also very old and ineffective. Yes, they were not only babas that were the ministers. They were very, very old. They were ineffective. Aside from that, she herself, she lacked experience. She doesn't know much about governance or anything. So although the pragmatic sanction, guaranteed a right to rule, and Austrians' internal weaknesses, like the ineffective men, like the cabals, the ineffective cabals, made it so uncertain whether she could maintain, or control. Sorry, let me adjust the. Okay. Oh, beautiful. So, made it uncertain whether she could maintain control of the region. All right. So, meanwhile, as at that time, another ruler had also recently come to power in Prussia. Okay. So, the name of this ruler was Frederick II of Prussia. So, of course, he took the throne from his father. I believe his father should also be Frederick. Yes, I believe his father should also be Frederick. I mean, we saw it in the War of Spanish Succession because even Prussia joined, Austria, fought side by side. Prussia actually supported France because they supported France because because of Bavaria. So now another ruler has recently come to power in Prussia, like I said. So unlike Austria, Prussia was well organized. It was financially strong. It has a very strong military, and that was how Frederick II saw an opportunity to expand Prussia's influence, and power by taking advantage of Austrian struggles. Because as at that time, Austria was really, really struggling. Austria was really, really struggling. So this ambition led him to launch an attack, a sudden attack on Silesia. So Silesia was actually a wealthy Australian province. It was this attack that gave the name the Rape of Silesia. Okay, because at that time Austria was susceptible, Austria was vulnerable. So taking Silesia, a very wealthy region of Austria, could be tagged as a rape, not the usual concept of rape that we know. Okay, so basically that's just about that. But now we are going to be looking at what actually happened. What happened? So I hope I can zoom out. Okay, well, in December 1740, during the harsh winter, so Frederick II ordered his army to march into Silesia. So, of course, I said Silesia is an Austrian province that was very rich in resources. Silesia had a population of 1 million people, and it was known for its fertile land, for its fertile soil. So, aside from the fact that it was known for its fertile soil, textile industry were doing well in that particular region. So it was like a very, very rich and prominent region in Austria. Like, okay, despite our weak military, despite how disorganized our empire could be, at least Silesia is working. Okay, so that was like literally like the major working area of Austria. So taking advantage of it could be tagged as rape. So that's why it was called the Rape of Silesia. Okay, so it was actually a shock to Austria. This invasion was a shock to Austria and the rest of Europe. Okay, it was unexpected, and nobody really saw it coming. Although Prussia tried to justify her actions by claiming historical rights to Silesia, even though those claims were baseless and had no had no hold no water. You get, but still on still, his attack was purely an act of aggression, motivated by his desires, his imperialistic ambition, to expand Prussia's power. Okay. All right. So after Frederick II successfully occupied Silesia, Frederick was now like, okay, take money. Let me give you money. Let me buy the land. Let me buy this land. Don't worry. Let it not look as though we are fighting. Let me buy the land from you. Maria Theresa was like, what are you saying? So she refused, and accepting this offer would actually set a dangerous precedent. And if Austria gave up Silesia, other European nations who also want to take advantage of that and come for other little remaining territory. So Maria Theresa began preparing for war. That you cannot say you want to buy. Okay, you've laid claims to Silesia, that you have legitimate and historical claims to this particular region, which were even baseless in the first place. We own Silesia. You can't say you can't say you have claims to Silesia. How are you connected to Silesia, for crying out loud? So she felt, if I should collect money from this guy, it means that other people will come and take over my little territories, and it's going to be a problem. You understand? So I will fight back, because if Frederick succeeded in buying Silesia, it means that other people too will come and maybe offer money or forcefully, because maybe perhaps because she was a woman, felt we could do and undo, So, determined to defend her territory, Maria Theresa started preparing for war. So this was what marked the beginning of the War of Austrian Succession, which would eventually last for 8 years. So the war was between 1740 to 1748. All right. Now, as time went by, the war was not, it stopped being, European wars most times are not just usually between the two major parties that are fighting. Sometimes other people usually get to join hands with, team up with a particular side, like take sides and fight against the other side, of course, because due to interest and all of these things. So as like I said, as the war continued between Austria and Prussia, it soon involved other European powers, each with their own interest, like I said. So let me quickly list out the countries that were against Austria. So the first one was Prussia. So Prussia was of course, Frederick II wanted to keep Silesia and strengthen Prussia's power. That was the reason why. Of course, that was the arch enemy of Austria. So the second one was France. This time around, King Louis XIV had died. Okay, so it was perhaps King Louis XV. So he saw an opportunity to weaken Austria, because Austria was a traditional enemy. Remember the War of Spanish Succession. France and Austria were not parties. They fought against each other. In fact, the War of Spanish Succession was basically a war between France and Austria in the first place. You get? So Austria was like their traditional enemy. So France was against Austria. Okay. Also was Bavaria. So the king of Bavaria initially before the War of Spanish Succession, it was Maximilian Emmanuel, Emmanuel of Bavaria. Maximilian Emmanuel, of Bavaria was, the king of Bavaria. Okay, now it's Chief Albert of Bavaria. That's the king at this time. So he wanted to challenge Maria Theresa, because he wanted the right to rule and become the Holy Roman Emperor itself. Because if you are ruling Austria, it means you are the one ruling. You are the ruler. You become automatically the ruler of the Holy Roman Empire. You become the ruler of the Holy Roman Empire. You become the emperor of the emperor, the Holy Roman Emperor yourself. Then, okay, so Spain was also against Austria. Of course, why would Spain not be against Austria? Because even Philip V of Spain. Remember that Philip V remained the king. So as at this time, 1740, he was still alive. Yes. So Philip V of Spain hoped to regain territories in Italy that Spain had lost to Austria. Remember, during the restitution in those two treaties that I mentioned, they gave some places, they restituted some area, they've lost some territories to Austria, to Britain, and other regions. Okay, so basically that's just that's just about that. Those were the countries that were against Austria: Prussia, France, Spain, and Bavaria. Okay, so the countries that were supporting Austria were Britain. So the king of Britain as at this time was King George II. So he supported Austria so as to prevent France from gaining more power, because he knows that if I don't support Austria, if I support France, it's going to be a disaster. So now I have to be against France, because if France should support Prussia to win against, or if France should fight against Austria, it means France has ulterior motives and wants to expand, and it's good to always make France become more powerful. Even in the 30 Years' War, you saw France strategically maneuvered through the war and made her emerge as one of the strongest European nations after the 30 Years' War. Okay, so that's what Britain was preventing. Remember, it's a war of interest. So the Dutch Republic, also wanted to keep the balance of power in Europe. They don't just want there to be fight. They don't want one party to be powerful and the other less powerful. So that's the reason why they were fighting. So Britain, Dutch were supporting Austria, as well as Hungary. So Hungary, Maria Theresa, after the First Silesian War, as we shall soon see, went to Hungary and pleaded with the Hungarian nobles to help strengthen her army. Okay, so basically you've known the people that are supporting Prussia, you've known the people that are supporting Austria already. So now we'll now be looking at the major two key phases of the war. So the first one is these two phases are divided. This war of Austrian succession are divided into two major phases. The first one is the First Silesian War, which took place from 1740 to 1742, while the second one was the war of the Second Silesian War, which was from 1745 to 1744 rather to 1745. Is it clear? I hope it's clear enough. So don't worry, I would explain these two phases in such a way that we would understand. No problem. So basically, the First Silesian War was from 1740 to 1742. Frederick II, invaded Silesia. It was the first to invade. You get the point now. So of course, Austria, it came as a shock, So Austria actually struggled. So when I mean Austrian, I'm talking about Maria Theresa. So Austria struggled, to defend her province, to defend, Silesia. But Prussia won a decisive victory at the Battle of Mulwitz in 1741. So Prussia actually won. So it was in Mulwitz that Prussia won. However, seeing that Prussia was able to defeat Austria at the Battle of Mulwitz in 1741, it gave other people the morale to attack. So France, Spain, and Bavaria also joined the war against Maria Theresa. Like I said, Maria Theresa was not ready to let go. So she personally traveled to Hungary, like I said, and appealed to the Hungarian nobles for help. And of course, they were moved by her bravery and they pledged their support. So they gave Austria much needed reinforcement, what they need to counter these people. But despite her effort, Maria Theresa was forced to sign the Treaty of Breslau in 1742. So this Treaty of Breslau made Maria Theresa to give up Silesia to Prussia in exchange for peace. Okay, so the Treaty of Breslau in 1742, made Maria Theresa to just say, okay, no problem, you can keep Silesia, no problem. That's no problem, we'll be fine. You get. So but then Maria Theresa went back and said, I don't think I don't like this arrangement. She just did it that time in 1742 just for peace, but she knew that she would come back for Silesia. So that would take us to the Second Silesian War from 1744 to 1745. Beautiful. Okay, so the Second Silesia War between 1744 to 1745. So Maria Theresa did not accept the loss of Silesia. Like I said, she was determined to reclaim it. So what she did was she started investing money in rebuilding her army and preparing for another war against Prussia. Frederick knew that this girl, what you saw at that time was just so that it not look as though I'm being stubborn, So he was even already prepared. In fact, as a matter of fact, he was one that launched the attack first. Prussia launched the attack first. Okay, so there was another invasion, and this time around 2-0. Austria was defeated again at the Battle of Hohenfriedberg in 1745. Austria had no choice but to sign the Treaty of Dresden. The Treaty of Dresden, that was what confirmed officially that, okay, Prussia, please control Silesia, because you go kill. Meanwhile, the war still spread beyond Austria and Prussia. France kept fighting Britain, and Dutch in the Austrian Netherlands, which is modern day Belgium. They kept fighting and fighting and fighting. While Spain attempted to regain some lost territory in Italy, the war now became very costly for all sides. So while Prussia and Austria were fighting, France and Britain were and other European nations were also fighting too. All right, so then the war now became very expensive. So much so that lives were lost, properties were destroyed. It led to several displacements of population. All right, so by 1748. It was the road to peace. So the Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle was signed in 1748. The Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle was signed. And so I said they had no choice than to sign the Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle. So basically, as the Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle was signed in 1748, all the countries that were fighting were already tired, they were exhausted, like, is there any need for this? So that was how the Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle ended the Austrian War of Succession. So what were the outcomes of this? What were the outcome of the Treaty of Aix-la-Chapelle? So basically, Maria Theresa, remained the ruler of Austria. She had to remain. She remained so Bavaria did not Chief Albert. King Albert did not succeed in making her not to rule Austria. So Maria Theresa remained the ruler of Austria, but she had to officially give up Silesia to Prussia. France and Britain returned some captured territories to each other. Okay, you remember that territories that were captured, Binoka and Gibraltar, as well as other territories in the course of the fight were returned. Okay, now it was like a balance. You take this territory, give me back this one. So some territories were returned to each other, and Spain also regained some lost territory in Italy. Because I told you that the first time that some territories of Spain was given as a form of restitution to Austria. So Spain was able to regain some of those territories. However, Austria still kept most of those territories and was able to keep most of its empire. So what were the consequences of this war? What was the consequences? What did this war lead to? So this war basically had, long-lasting effect on Europe, because Prussia are able to defeat Silesia, Austria. No, man, you get. So Prussia became a major power, and also by keeping Silesia, since Silesia was, a very, very important region, it made Prussia become very powerful, and it rose. Of course, there were people marveled at the military strength of Prussia, because Prussia was very small, so small compared to Austria. So for Prussia to defeat Austria and also rape Silesia, they considered Prussia to be a major European, nation. So somehow, Prussia rose and became a major world power in Europe. Austria military reform. So Austria also improved Austrian army and administrations to prevent future losses, future fights, future wars, because it was one of those consequences of the war. That war taught Maria Theresa how to organize her army, how to start pushing funds into the military sector so as to avoid future wars. So if any war comes up in the future, they'll be able to combat it. All right. So of course there were still increased rivalry between what do they call it? Between France and Britain, and it was by virtue of this war that set the stage for the 7 Years' War that would eventually, maybe happen later in the future, between 1756 and 1763. Of course, it's one of those major European wars between Britain and France. Okay, so this was what set, the premise for the subsequent war between France and Britain. So those were basically the outcome of the War of Spanish Succession. So, although what do we learn from this? Although Maria Theresa survived the war, with her role intact, but she had lost an important territory, which was Silesia. Okay, and Prussia, under Frederick II, rose to prominence as one of those major European nations. People saw it as as a very bold strategy from Frederick II to challenge, the status quo of Austria. Okay, so this war did not resolve all conflicts, as the case may be, and tensions between European states remained, leading to even greater wars in the future. All right, hey.